Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prophet podcast, hosted by Craig Phillips and Jeff Torrey. Visit us at fantasyfootballprophet.com. And now your hosts, Craig and Jeff.
Welcome everyone to the Fantasy Football Prophet podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey, and today we're doing a little Week 15 recap. We had some games on Saturday, one on Thursday, a bunch today, so we're going to go over, the star players that were for this week. Star player of the day, I think, is pretty clear. It's going to be Todd Gurley, who just went nuts today. He had, by halftime, I think, he already had 33.8 points in standard scoring leagues, which just a ridiculous game from him.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? He's done it all year, but once again, a 4-touchdown performance, 152 yards rushing. At Seattle, too. The guy is a freak. He's awesome. And why we laughed when people thought about actually benching him against the Seattle defense. That's why you don't. That's why you don't bench your stud players, because this can happen any given time. And he's been wonderful all year. And he just put on the cherry on top for a lot of people. I know he helped them win their league. So good for you guys. Congratulations, because I'm sure there's a ton of you out there listening right now that really found pay dirt because of Gurley this week.
Yeah, I mean, he was the number one back heading into the week, and I mean, people were legitimately asking us if they should bench him or not, which just, you start your studs. I mean, I guess it didn't work out this week with Russell Wilson if you did that, starting your studs, but still, majority of the time, that's what works, and so you just go with it, and you start players like Gurley, because this is what he's going to do. So if you have another week, hopefully he'll do it again and keep you winning the championship next week. How about we go over to Kareem Hunt, who on Saturday night went off for the Chiefs against the Chargers, which ended up being, I think, his second highest scoring game of the season, which is kind of impressive after how he started those first three games. But he disappeared for about 2 months, and all of a sudden Kareem Hunt's back. He's right back to being a top 5 back, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tip my hat to him. Not that I wrote him off, but I was very down on him, and for good reason. But they talk about increasing his workload. Last 2 weeks, 24 carries and 25 carries. They got back to feeding the beast, and it paid big time for him. So it's nice to see him actually look like he wasn't just a flash in the pan for the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah. Hopefully people kept starting him. I mean, they should have started him this week after he came back last week and played really well, because this is what you can expect from him. And next week he's going against Miami. He could probably do it again, but I think the big key is here. The last 2 weeks he's gotten 25 carries and 24 carries. I think they just needed to hand him the ball and keep it going with him. I mean, that's pretty much for those weeks where he did nothing. He wasn't getting the ball, so I think it's a big step for that, and I think he's going to have another great week. He might be a top 5 back for us next week. He's going to be right around there, especially the top guys have pretty much separated themselves. It's like Gurley now. Hunt could be up there, but then how about we could quick talk about the New Orleans backs. They did it again. Mark Ingram was the big story. He had the big game this week, and then Alvin Kamara still got a touchdown. Didn't really do much else, but he gets 14.9 in standard because he just catches some balls. He gets in the end zone every time.
Yeah, even without the touchdown, he doesn't kill you. He gets you about 9 points from, like you said, 12 carries and 6 receptions. Not bad at all. Even Ingram, he got it done. And he got it done kind of like Kamara, because usually he gets a few more carries and kind of mostly a runner than a receiver, but 77 yards out of 5 catches. And then obviously only 12 carries, but 2 of them turn into, the end zone. So 27 points for this guy. And, once again, just he's been wonderful pretty much all season, but definitely since their break, or their bye week on week 5. So both of these guys, guaranteed starters every single time, even together, it just shows you they both are almost guaranteed double digits, which is pretty ridiculous when you take a look at what they're able to accomplish with splitting the workload. They're outscoring almost every other back and getting, less than half the touches, really.
And then also for the Saints, Michael Thomas has now got touchdowns in 3 straight games, starting to finally, I think, look like the player everyone thought he was at the beginning of the season, what he should have been, especially these last 2 games. So it's good to see that from him as well. And then All right. How about a quarterback here? I'm going to talk about Cam Newton. Just went nuts today. And I mean, I guess this is what Cam Newton does, though. He's going to have weeks like this. I guess you never quite know when the ridiculously amazing Cam Newton's going to show up, but he did today with 4 touchdown passes. Can you expect it next week against Tampa?
I mean, to tell you the truth, that's why it's always so difficult to play this guy, because I really don't know what Cam Newton is going to show up. And we had talked about this in previous podcasts. We had questions about who would we start, who could you pick up, this and that. And when you have just 1 week to play him, I think it was actually me. I was like, maybe I'd lean Case Keenum. I think that was who we're kind of comparing, who's someone that's very steady and someone who's kind of up and down. And once again, I mean, Case Keenum, 23 points. Nice person to have in there and to start. But, if you put Cam in there, he could easily win you the week. So it kind of goes back to that which person, like how much risk reward can you put up there? Cam Newton, obviously, he could be an easy start next week as well. But it'll be the same question. He could pull kind of a Russell Wilson this week and really put you in a hole. So I don't know. How risk adverse can you be?
I think next week I'm gonna start him and not worry about it because of the fact that he's playing Tampa. That's about it. I think that's just a good matchup.
Well, you say that, but he played Tampa Bay earlier this season, only put up 14.5. It's not the same Tampa Bay team. That was a while ago. That was week 8. But it just shows you. I mean, I probably am leaning there with you because at this point, you probably just put your big guns in. But it's always one of those things. People are gonna, probably come back at us and said, "Oh, you said you would have started him." I just want you to know it could easily go the other way on you too. He's so up and down.
Probably don't have a better option. And with the good matchup next week, I think you just go with it. You roll with it. You hope for the best. Maybe you'll get 40 and win your league. He can definitely win you your league. That's for sure.
Yeah. And since we're talking about quarterbacks, you have to ask the question. Nick Foles, huge game, the second highest scoring QB, 4 touchdowns with only like 230 yards. Is this a real thing? Is this like what the Philadelphia offense can produce? Just a lot of touchdowns, and even though they don't need a lot of passing yards, is he going to be a viable option next week as well?
I think so. I think he really will be. And that's the thing. I wasn't terribly scared about Nick Foles for the Eagles. I mean, I didn't expect this, obviously, but I didn't think he was going to just completely hurt them. He's an experienced quarterback. He's had good seasons in the past. It's possible he could play well, and he gets to play Oakland at home next week. I mean, I would probably roll him out there in leagues and feel decent about it, thinking he can get you 20 points. I'm not expecting 30 points, but yeah, I think he's going to be okay. That offense is good enough where he doesn't have to do a lot to actually put up decent numbers either. All right, how about the Jacksonville team? And Blake Bortles, a great game again. This is becoming pretty normal for Blake Bortles again. This is, 4 weeks in a row he's been a fairly good fantasy quarterback. And how about, and this is without Leonard Fournette. These are the guys who scored touchdowns for him today on this team. It's Tommy Bohannon scores a touchdown, scores 2. Jaden Mickens scores 2. You got Keelan Cole scoring a touchdown and Corey Grant scoring a touchdown. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how they win. They put up 45 points on the board when those are the players scoring touchdowns all game. This is just ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, I really don't know what to tell you on this one. I highly doubt people are playing any of these guys, so it probably doesn't affect you that much. But I mean, even like Tommy Bohannon, a fullback that got 2 carries, both for a yard, both for a touchdown. He ends up with 12 points out of nowhere. Those wide receivers, they really were out of nowhere too. I mean, injuries hit, and this is the kind of stuff you end up seeing. I guess the question, and I don't know how bad Lee's injury is, but you had mentioned one of the wide receivers, and I know we had talked about him just before this episode, kind of talking about where the heck did this guy come from. But Keelan Cole actually has looked good the past 3 weeks, a touchdown in each game, and the last 2 have been very, very nice. Is he someone that you would actually look to pick up to play in kind of the final weeks in playoff time? Is he a viable option?
I would be very hesitant about it. I'd have to be hurting at wide receiver to play him. I feel like even though he's been pretty good, he gets to go against San Francisco. It's a decent matchup. I'd have to be in probably a deeper league to think about it. I don't think I could bring myself to do it. I don't know. I don't think I could play him.
Right. It's still a little too unknown. I do have to say, though, against Seattle, 3 catches, 99 yards, a touchdown, and today, 7 catches, 186 yards and a touchdown, which seems like a bit aggressive of a jump. You'll see this sometimes, but if Lee really is hurt and Cole is actually, projected to be one of those starters, it might be kind of an interesting one, especially for maybe a keeper league or someone. You see these guys kind of emerge at the end of the year. Don't hesitate to maybe throw him on your bench if you have a spot left over.
Yeah, I mean, Cole could be interesting for a dynasty league. I don't know if there's anything here for sure, but he's still, and in the future, he's going to be behind Allen Robinson at least. I can't say he's going to, maybe Marquise Lee. There's a lot of receivers there on this team that just are kind of.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going to happen. It's more of a wait and see kind of thing if you have the room, obviously.
All right, how about another wide receiver here? Go to the Giants, and Sterling Shepard goes off today for the Giants as they almost beat the Eagles. They kept it close. 11 catches, 139 yards, and a touchdown. He's had, 3 big games this season out of all the rest have been nothing games or he's been hurt. 3 big games, and this is just one of them.
Yep, and really you can chalk it up to the fact that Eli didn't play the way he played previously in the season. I don't know what the difference was. Maybe because they shook it up. Maybe that, he just was on for some reason. But Eli Manning had one heck of a game as well, and he has really struggled all year. So I think that's what I chalk it up to. I think I think Shepard is a talented wide receiver, but really it doesn't matter unless you're Beckham. I think Beckham can pretty much overcome any odds. But if Eli plays well, I think Shepard will play well. But when Eli's not getting it done, it doesn't matter who's running routes out there. So Eli Manning, 434 yards, 3 touchdowns, and one interception, 33 points, by far his best performance of the year. I think he had one other game. I shouldn't say by far. He had 2 other games early on in the season that were good, but everything else is kind of mid-teens, if not lower. So it just kind of goes to show, it really does matter who else is playing around you especially when you're a wide receiver.
Yeah, even Tavares King caught 2 passes, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns for the Giants. So another one of those just random big fantasy days you weren't expecting at all. Just, man, if somebody started Tavares King, I'd be very impressed. He was owned in 0.5% of the league, so hey, you never know.
Before this, he was ranked 110th as a wide receiver.
You did good for you.
2 catches, 70 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
All right, how about, there wasn't necessarily a crazy big fantasy day, but Jimmy Garoppolo, I was going to bring up his name, threw for 381 yards and a touchdown. And if you did play him, that's still it's a very solid game. And the 49ers are basically undefeated. I think since Jimmy Garoppolo's been out there. So 3-0, I think, with him now. Yeah,
he looks really, really nice, and another nice game. Tennessee is no slouch when it comes to defense, really. He's not playing one of the worst teams there. You would hope that he could maybe get that touchdown number up that can really amp up your points. But the only bad thing about him, and I think he's going to be an interesting one going into next year, but his final 2 games are against 2 very good defenses, Jacksonville and then the LA Rams. So unfortunately, I don't know if I would necessarily look at him the rest of the year, but his name is going to be pretty hot when it comes next year for the draft, because you're starting to see what he can do, and with not a whole lot of weapons around him at the moment.
Well, other than, I guess, maybe Marquise Goodwin now, in the 3 games with Garoppolo, he's caught a total of 24 passes in these 3 games and has 99 yards, 106, and 114 in the 3 games. That's impressive.
Yeah, it really is. And once again, he's another guy putting up good numbers without getting touchdowns. So that's always a very positive thing, and hopefully he can expand on that. But another guy, he's one of these guys that we had talked about a few weeks ago. He can really make the difference for a playoff push, a guy that you can get late in the season that kind of comes on and puts up a few points where you don't expect it.
Yeah, still next week against Jacksonville. Then I'm not sure about starting any of them, though. I think it might be it for this year, but
yeah, I would agree. I agree with you on that one.
He'll definitely be an interesting pickup next week. And then how about, I can talk about San Francisco. Robbie Gould, 24 points.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. The kickers with this many points kill me. Where were all these performances last year too? Or last week, I should say. I'm looking at all these players, even Suckup or whatever, got 14 points compared to his one last week, and all these players screwed me. Yeah, but 24 points by Robbie Gould, that's brutal way to lose. And I know that will actually be a difference in a lot of games, is that 24 points from a kicker. That's a hard one to compete with.
It is. When you get that many points out of a kicker, I mean, you're probably in pretty good shape. And I don't know, maybe eliminate the quick kicker from your leagues. I wouldn't, if a league was wanting to do that, I wouldn't probably go against it. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I would definitely listen, because I feel like I definitely get hurt by that more than it helps me. Or I feel like it's more luck, I should say.
It's complete luck, I feel like, for the most part. And yeah, it's crazy. Now, some other guys probably don't need to talk about too much, but they just had another good games. Le'Veon Bell, Rob Gronkowski, those kind of guys, that's why they're ranked up near the top all the time. They're great players, and they keep putting up good games. Same thing with Melvin Gordon. We didn't talk about him when we talked about that Kansas City-San Diego game. He had another good game. He does it with more receiving yards, actually, than rushing yards. So LaShawn McCoy gets another decent game, even though the yardage wasn't there. He gets touchdowns. So a lot of they start your studs. I guess the studs are the ones getting the points here again, other than some random guys too. But you keep playing those guys.
Right, but those random guys probably aren't going to be played. I mean, I think a good example of this is DeAndre Hopkins. Didn't have a whole lot of points going against Jacksonville, and then in one quarter he pretty much goes from 1 point to 14, that quickly. So it's just one of those things. You have to play those guys. They're too talented to really, I'd much rather end up with a 4-point performance out of Hopkins than risk it on a someone lower down the line. I'd definitely always give those guys an opportunity to score for you.
All right, how about some disappointments here for the week? I guess one of them could be Russell Wilson. Didn't really.
I was going to say a few quarterbacks, but he's got to be leading the charge just because he was doing so well.
How about stick with Seattle here? We'll go over the tight end here. Jimmy Graham. So over the last 2 weeks, Jimmy Graham has played both games, yet I have scored more fantasy points than Jimmy Graham has. He has negative 0.1 over the last 2 weeks combined.
Oh, it's so bad.
1 catch for negative 1 yard. What's all of a sudden happened? I don't understand that, because he was scoring touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns in 4 games before that. He had just getting touchdowns in almost every game, and then he's just did absolutely nothing these last 2 weeks. So yeah, disappointment. But you know what? You're starting him. I think you're still starting him, because tight end's a tough position. I don't see how you have anybody better. So just start him next week and hope for the best. I guess that's all I would say for that one. Let's see here. About AJ Green. Pretty disappointing game, but it wasn't necessarily unexpected going against Minnesota. You just hope a player of AJ Green's caliber is able to overcome it, but he just really wasn't able to. And I think he got about 30 yards on the day. So, I mean, yeah, if he had a better quarterback, maybe he could have overcame that. But when you're playing against that good of a pass defense and your quarterback's not very good, it's going to be a rough outing for you, I guess. And 2 catches for 30 yards just probably hurt a lot of people's fantasy teams this week.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, because AJ Green, as talented as they may be, the past 2 weeks when playoffs hit, he hasn't done anything, and that's really rough. And even before that, it's really touchdown dependent in order to put up points. I feel like it's actually been kind of a strange year for, first of all, that Bengals team in general. But I think everyone kind of thought that Dalton may take a step forward, or at least more consistent with AJ. I feel like over the past seasons he has been. So it's a kind of a strange turn for him being kind of as prolific as he has been. Very good. Obviously, I think he was, before this week, he was ranked the 5th best wide receiver still. But, it just goes to show you could build out your roster really, really well. And then 4.4 and 3 points, 2 weeks of when you really, really need him. That's, you would hope that someone of his caliber could do it against Minnesota, even though I know that defense is rough. 30 yards just isn't getting it done.
Then how about Jordy Nelson? Rodgers comes back. We expect, okay, this is why Nelson wasn't doing well. No Aaron Rodgers, and yet he doesn't do anything again. He does another 3 for 28. I mean, is Jordy really just done at this point?
I hate to write him off, and especially now that Aaron Rodgers is back. It really is one game, and I'll say this. Even though Aaron Rodgers scored 27 points, he definitely had to shake off the rust. I mean, he threw 3 interceptions. He didn't look as sharp as he usually does. He pulled it out for fantasy owners. But I'm not ready to write Jordy off quite yet. But he's definitely, I would have to say that this is the beginning of a steep decline. It's just, does he have a year left? Does he have, next week against Minnesota? If AJ Green couldn't do it, is this someone that you're just writing off for next week in general?
Yeah. I'm not putting Jordy in my lineup next week at all. He's on the bench and maybe next year, but I doubt it. I don't know. This might be the end of the run. At least at the very least, you're going to be able to get Jordy Nelson for very cheap in an auction draft, very late in a snake draft next year, I think.
Well, you say that, but I'm not sure if you like. I would be very interested to find out what the consensus is, because it really does only take one good game, in the final couple or whatever, for everyone to forget about how much he struggled. And you look at those numbers in the beginning of the year, and he was just on fire with Aaron Rodgers. So once again, I have a hard time completely writing him off, but does it change anything if Davante Adams does not clear concussion protocol and he's not able to come back next week? Does that free up more passes to go his way? Would it change your mind at all?
Maybe slightly, but it even seemed to be, after Adams was out, it seemed like Geronimo Allison was getting more of the looks.
Yeah, and we all know how much I love Geronimo Allison, so I'd love to actually see him in a big-time position there. I think he would be a very good wide receiver. But yeah, I watched a lot of this game, and I once again, I just can't tell you if Jordy is just on the decline or if the fact that teams know this, so they try to take Jordy out of it. I'm not sure. I can't tell exactly what's going on with him, to be honest. But I'm probably leaning with Craig over here. I think it would be very, very scary to start him next week for as much as he struggled. I mean, he hasn't gotten a touchdown since week 5, and he hasn't gone over, I think 60 yards is the best he's done since week 5 too. So I mean, there's not a whole lot there that if I'm just going by numbers, there's no way.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it. And there's just not much of a chance I'd play him. So don't trust it. I mean, if you're in a deeper league or you're in a spot where you have no receivers, yeah, you can play him, but I would do it and expect 3 points. That's about, I think, what you could do for them. So I'm going to stay away. But all right, we got any other players here, or is that about it?
I mean, no, I think QB is a very interesting. What do you think about? I mean, obviously that crazy Patriots-Pittsburgh game. Patriots pull it out. Once again, they're going to win their division, conference, whatever. But 17 points, he did okay. This is his best in 3 games. But what are you feeling about Tom Brady? Like, I think it's a fair question to ask. Is this someone that you want to play next week, or can you find someone that you like more? Obviously, we always lean towards playing the studs. Does that rule apply for Tom Brady? Yeah,
I still am playing him. Yeah, it hasn't been a great 3 weeks necessarily, but I'm still going to play Tom Brady. And I just don't, there's the other options, what you probably would consider are going to end up being like the players who have done pretty well here, like Foles or Keenum or Bortles. And I'm not playing any of them over Brady, even though they've been outscoring him. I'm still playing Tom Brady because who knows, maybe this is the game where he throws 4 1-yard touchdowns, He just hasn't been doing as many of those.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just had to ask the question because I know that is going to be rattling around some people's minds, and for good reason too. I totally understand it, but once again, I'd be hard pressed not to start someone of his caliber.
That's for sure. But all right, I think that's going to do it. We'll be back tomorrow, I think we'll have some waivers. The last waiver show of the year, I'm pretty sure at this point. Get you ready for your week 16 games. Might be a couple players out there you can pick up. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about those Jacksonville receivers and if any of them are worthwhile or you should even consider them at all. So, and get some QB streamers and some defenses for you. But we will talk to you guys tomorrow.